MSAA.
Just like that, it is the offseason in the Ville for the Louisville Cardinals men's basketball team. Thanks for tuning in to another week's edition of Mondays with Dalton Pence here on the Big X Sports Radio. Dalton Pence and Matt Childress taking you up till 7 o'clock tonight. Rome, obviously not on the Mike Rutherford show today, not on Mondays with Dalton Pence either. I had to mention that it is the offseason for the men's basketball team because the women's team did survive against Alabama earlier today. They'll play in the Sweet 16 against Michigan on Saturday. Death, taxes. Jeff Walls leading his team to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. Matt, what's going on, brother?
Nothing much. Had a lot of talk for, multiple fan bases today. It's been fun.
How's that like?
It's fun to see the different sides of, the state of Kentucky and where the fan bases lie, and I'm surprised to see one be a lot more volatile than the other ones.
Who's crashing out the hardest right now?
Kentucky fans are crashing out the hardest. I feel like if Pat didn't, if they didn't win against USF, it would be about equal.
I agree.
But it's not even, it's in droves. It's not even close.
I agree. 502-414-1450, the Gameday Mens Health text line, 502-414-1450 to get any thoughts and questions. And I see the text thread is already hot. A lot of messages during the Mike Rutherford show. Be sure to keep those messages flowing. We got all your Louisville Cardinals talk leading up till 7 o'clock. We'll answer whether or not this season lived up to expectations, roster construction, what needs to happen over the next couple months in the portal, who stays and who goes. We'll give our predictions. We'll take a look at this critical off season ahead and how Pat Kelsey needs to turn this team into a national championship contender in year 3. So, look, I think that leading up to the NCAA tournament, my expectation was winning a tournament game. You know, we knew what we knew about this team. Michael, we didn't know at the time of last week's radio show, we didn't know that he was going to miss the NCAA tournament. Honestly, I was optimistic. But even if he were to have played, my expectation was still to win a single tournament game, which was different from my preseason expectation, which I think honestly means more than the postseason expectation because, I mean, just because of what happened during the season doesn't mean you get a pass for it. Like, Cason Pryor wasn't really a regular in the rotation all season. But I really can't give Pat Kelsey a pass for that because he knew that Cason was coming back from the ACL tear the November previous. And it's just kind of hard to give someone a pass when you took the risk. It's sort of the same thing with Mark Pope and Jaden Quaitons. But preseason expectation was, at the very least, second weekend. You saw what they spent on that team. There was a ton of hype. Maybe you give him a little bit of grace because Michael only played half the season. But even then, I still feel like, Matt, this season didn't live up to the expectations.
No, not at all. I mean, there's plenty of people out there that were expecting, not just Louisville fans in general, but, I mean, media personnel across the country saying that this team had Final Four aspirations in terms of the roster you put together. But you do have to take the hand you were drawn and still play with it, and Louisville got drawn a pretty rough hand with the Michael Brown situation. That's a lot of that in terms of the roster construction is on Pat Kelsey. I mean, you already mentioned it, Cason Pryor. I mean, that's just a huge miss. It's a guy who you paid to be here, and he gave you, I mean, as close to nothing as one possibly could. And then you have Frew, who you're bringing in from, over in Germany, and you're expecting him to adapt. We felt that he did every once in a while, but it seemed like he just wasn't consistent enough. Honestly, one of the only people you saw really make a jump in this season was Zugras. Woolley had his moments, but it wasn't consistently. Towards the end of the season, I felt like I could count on Zugras more than half this roster.
And therein lies the problem, right? The regression as a squad. Maybe it's because the player that you built your team around missed basically half the season. Maybe it's because the guy that you decided to bring back, who you paid a good amount of money to be a key part of this rotation, was a healthy scratch for a good amount of the games. I feel like the anger about the injuries would have been a lot less had the messaging been consistent. I feel like I'm more frustrated with the communication aspect of the injuries more so than the injuries themselves, because I understand back injuries are tricky. It just seemed like we never got consistent communication whatsoever throughout this season. And same thing with Cason Pryor. It was a vague answer when Pat Kelsey got asked about Cason Pryor. It's March 23rd. The season is over, and we still don't have a concrete answer as to why he was never really part of the rotation. Was it because of the mental hurdles of coming back from this injury? Was it physical? I don't know, but he was a healthy scratch, so he was available. Pat Kelsey just chose not to play him. So I think a lot of this is the messaging and the communication aspect of the injuries more so than the injuries themselves, Matt.
No, I mean, I think so too. It was one where you could even see during the season when the pressure really started to come down on Pat Kelsey, you could see it wearing on him. I mean, this is a guy who, even in the worst of times, we've seen in press conferences be extremely uplifting and, bought in behind his guys, always backing them up, and he still does that. But, I mean, we saw him get nippy with some media personnel this season. We saw him get a little agitated in some of these post-game press conferences. You could tell that this was the first year it was really affecting him. And a lot of that, like you said, comes down to, you could say what you want about whatever player you want. It comes down to communication. I mean, the fan base was just left in the dark for a lot of the season.
One thing I did not stand for at all. Look, I'm not a huge believer in, gaslighting the portion of the fan base that I don't agree with, right? I feel like the Kenny Payne era, there was a lot of gaslighting. especially trying to create a third season. But it feels like the Louisville fan base got demonized a little bit this year for asking the questions. Maybe not necessarily so much from Pat himself, but there was a portion of this fan base that sort of seemed shocked that people were asking about the injuries. And I'm like, you best believe, I mean, you spent this much money and built your team around Mike Held. The fan base deserves to know what's going on. I mean, I understand medical situation. There are certain details you shouldn't get into, but you can't really be upset at the portion of the fan base that was upset about there being a lack of consistency with communication. He went from, oh, he's a game time decision against Tennessee to not playing for a full month after that. And now he goes out against Clemson and doesn't play for the rest of the year. So I'm sorry. I understand that, of course, rights are protected with HIPAA and injuries and stuff like that. I'm not asking you to give me a full medical diagnosis, but they didn't really give you much information at all. And I think that was what people were frustrated with the most. And I got to be honest, I can't blame them. Can't blame them at all. You're spending that much money as a program on certain players and they're not available. And I get it. The fan base isn't necessarily entitled to any information, but you can't sit here with a straight face and be surprised that your passionate fan base is upset when you give no answers about a player's availability. And of course, this isn't really so much about Pat Kelsey. It's more so about the other portion of the fan base that is almost trying to demonize the portion that's trying to seek out the answers.
No, yeah, I mean, it's one where it's a very diverse of community at this point where I feel like a lot of that's stemmed from, you already mentioned it, when Kenny Payne was coaching. It's terms of, we're moving on from Chris Mack, we're moving on from Rick Pitino. We have to eventually stick with one of these coaches no matter what happens. And it's just getting to the point where it's at the boiling point. It's one where you have half the fan base that's so put up with that they want to win now, with the other half of the fan base that says, look, we don't want to get into the coaching cycle talk again. We don't want to be in this infinite loop like IU where you're just constantly hiring coach after coach after coach after coach, looking for some minute win column here and there, and then just praying you get back to where you were at before. I understand both sides, but at the same point, you alleviate a lot of that by being upfront with the fan base yourself, in terms of, you're taking on a head coaching job in one of the most volatile states in the country, if not the most volatile state in the country when it comes to college basketball. And you have to understand that it's almost like the Green Bay Packers, right? Where that the fan base owns that team. Like the city owns the team.
I agree. Look, I guess I'm starting to, it's the extreme portions of the fan base, right? There's one side of the fan base that basically says that if you criticize Pat Kelsey at all, you're being unfair and you're basically advocating for him to be fired. And then there's the other extreme that basically Pat Kelsey can do no right. And I'm tired of both equally, truthfully, because what I've been seeing on social media is, well, Pat Kelsey's 100% not the guy and he hasn't shown you any good things in the first 2 years. Then there's a portion of the fan base is like, oh, well, just because you're criticizing him, you must have forgot how bad the Kenny Payne era went. You're not being grateful. And it's just, it's frustrating. Like, how can you not see the middle ground there? Lazar guy says, tons of gaslighting going on right now. People are throwing tantrums about other fans and not being sold on Kelsey, a guy whose best win of his career is a road game in Miami against a first-time head coach. I mean, that goes without saying. Like, you can understand and admit that Pat Kelsey injected life back into this program when it desperately needed it. And I appreciate Pat Kelsey for doing so. I thought that he had a really good first year, even though the ACC wasn't that great. I thought that his program dealt with adversity super well. They got back to the NCAA tournament, so you kind of addressed that elephant in the room. And then this season, there were some good things that happened this season. You beat Kentucky. So we say, well, Kentucky wasn't that good of a team. Well, Pat Kelsey can't control that. They still won a tournament game. Well, you didn't have any bad losses. That is a good thing to bring up. And you won a tournament game. The issue with that is, although it's progress, it's not enough. It might be a step in the right direction, but we just watched Ben McCollum, first year at Iowa. They're in the Sweet 16 now. So it can be done. Of course, Pat Kelsey took over a program that, I mean, there probably hasn't been a program worse off than Louisville in the Power 5 in how long? Louisville's program was sinking into irrelevance. So I think Pat Kelsey, in the first 2 seasons, he's done an acceptable job. I think he's done a good job, but there are valid questions about whether or not he can take Louisville to being a contender every single year. And you and I have a podcast episode coming out tomorrow morning about just that. But you have to see the middle ground here. You don't have to believe one thing or the other. It can be true that what Pat Kelsey's done up to this point, it's good, it's acceptable. But what's also true is that there has to be a higher ceiling than this if it's going to work, right? And I desperately hope that Pat Kelsey is the guy. I hope that he can turn Louisville into a contender. Are they right now? Not at all. Matt, let me ask you this. Does your stance on the season, let's say that they lose in the round of 32. I understand that the postseason, what you do in the postseason, sort of directly reflects on how you view a season in particular. But let's say that Louisville didn't have their mighty struggles with Q1A games. Let's say they won half. Well, let's just say they won about like 3 to 4 Q1A games, okay? Does that change the way that you view this era going into year 3? Knowing that they've held their own and won some of the Q1A games versus just winning one specific one at the end of the year?
I think it does, at least a little bit, in terms of I feel like I'm just taking this as it's the exact same situation as we had this season with the same roster and everything, but you just had a couple ways go your way. I think it shows that this team was able to battle adversity, and Pat Kelsey himself was able to adjust when things weren't going well, which a lot of those games happened without Michael Brown, which it seemed like adjustments were the biggest thing that was at least de facto for Pat Kelsey this season, was figuring out what to do in those high-pressure situations when the game starts to get away from you. This team just began to start to roll over a lot. And down the stretch, we figured that out, and it seemed like it started to click with the guy, so that's good. But I think that playing with the hand you were dealt so far, if you were to win a couple more of those games, I think it does kind of pull everyone together and say, okay, really good season. That's a little bit more of a disappointment around a 32, I think. But at the end of the day, I do think it makes me feel a little bit better.
One thing that my podcast episode that got published today or midnight, Sunday night, basically stated this fact, or not stated this fact, but stated this point that progress was made, just didn't live up to the standard, didn't live up to the expectations, and had some people respond, had some people actually text me. It was like, I got to disagree because we made progress. And I'm like, making progress doesn't always equal meeting the expectation. Like Pat Kelsey himself said it. Pat Kelsey himself said round of 32 is not the standard. So you don't have to believe me. Believe your head coach. Your head coach even understands it. And I think Pat Kelsey understands the assignment. The issue is that you can't just pass the assignment at Louisville. You got to ace the test. In year 3, all eyes are on PK. But do you, knowing what you know first couple of years, the good and the bad, what he's dealt with, what maybe he hasn't adjusted or adapted to, what is your personal vibe heading into year 3? Do you ultimately think that he's going to turn this thing around, or maybe not turn this thing around because it's already turned around? Do you think he can elevate this program to that contender status every year?
See, this season for me was extremely humbling as a Louisville fan in terms of, we went through such a rough time from the end of the Mac era into the Kenny Payne era and then now here that it seems like this rebuild has gone on for, I think now it's been a decade. I think almost. I think was it 2017 when Rick Pitino was fired?
Yep.
Okay, so it's been 9 years. So it's been almost a decade that we've been going through this rebuild, and I feel like that's where a lot of the angst is coming from. So for me, like I said, it's been extremely humbling. I feel like moving into year 3, Pat Kelsey has all of the resources at his disposal and now has the head coaching experience being in a Power 4 conference 2 years in a row. 1 year was really easy. 1 year was a lot more difficult. The ACC was a lot better this year. I think he has the ability to build on this again. Do I think that he makes a Final Four next season? No, I don't think so. Would I like that? Yes, but I think he has the ability to show more promise next year, make a second weekend, make an Elite Eight, to show that the Pat Kelsey system is still evolving and it's still building, it's still going strong, and that he still knows what the standard is here in the city of Louisville.
But Lazar guy brings up a good point. He's still learning, but it's not just losing the Q1A games. Majority of these games have been butt kickings, is what Lazar guy brings up. And that's a very, very good point. It's not just the fact that you're losing these games. It's that you're getting embarrassed. You're getting embarrassed to the point to where it's a national talking point. People have clowned this team this year because of that. And a stat that I mentioned last night, Matt, Mike tweeted it out on Saturday. Louisville is 0-10 under Pat Kelsey when trailing by 5 or more points at halftime. So, is some of it scheme-related? Yeah. But do we need to see some coaching adjustments as well? Also, yeah. So, I think that that's where we need to go next is, from a coaching perspective, we have to figure out this substituting pattern. I think that this year was Pat Kelsey's first glimpse of how it works in the Power 5, because the year prior, his first season, you had 3 significant injuries right off the bat. You had to go with a shorter rotation because, well, you had no choice. You didn't have the bodies. And it ultimately didn't allow PK to run things the way that he was either used to or the way that he wanted it to. So this year, you got a front row seat to watch what worked and what didn't, and it felt like it works better in theory more than it does actually in practice. Platooning players only has worked a handful of times in college basketball history. The last time that I can truly remember was 2015 UK, when they had 10 solid guys. I just don't know how realistic it is. You need to run a rotation. 7 to 9 players at most. And you have to have a much clearer intention and plan for substituting, because it felt like this season, a lot of the substituting, you were just subbing to sub. You were subbing to sub, and you were taking out the best players on any given night just to go back to what you normally were used to with starters. We saw it at times with Kenai Roots against Miami. We saw it with Kobe Rogers at times. A couple guys that weren't always going to be your best players, but when they're playing the best on any given night, they need to stay in. And that's where it comes down to that adaptability. Pat Kelsey, if we watched it, you saw Pat Kelsey on the sideline. He witnessed how the substituting was almost counterproductive to momentum, didn't allow you to maintain that momentum throughout the games. And the only thing that I think would separate a huge change would be if Pat Kelsey believes in this system so much to where you don't change it up. And I think that would be a mistake in year 3.
I think so as well. I think that you're at the point where Pat Kelsey has the opportunity, like I said, show you that he is developing. You're right, that, Lazar guy made a good point in the terms that you can't sit here and just constantly, badger on about development because he has been coaching for 14 years now. But at the same time, this is his second season in a Power 4 conference, and it is a lot different at the highest level of college basketball than it is at a mid-major. It just is. The talent level you're bringing in, the talent level you're dealing with, the coaching styles are different. The competition you're playing with is obviously different. The travel itself is different. Everything about this system is different for him. So I think you made a good point that in his first season, he wasn't able to really get a feel using the system he wants to play with and he wants to coach with. So this was his trial run, unfortunately, for us. And I am betting on Pat Kelsey that he understands that because he's a smart guy and he's a smart basketball coach. and he makes those adjustments going into year 3, I think a lot of those adjustments are going to have to stem from his coaching staff, though. I think there's a lot of fresh faces, a lot of guys who aren't very proven in that staff.
Do you think Louisville makes some changes on the staff?
I think so.
I do as well.
I think, like I said, I think it's a lot of fresh faces. I think it's a lot of guys that don't have a lot of experience at this level, and when you're pairing that with a head coach that also doesn't have experience at this level, it's not a recipe for success. You need to have some guys who have experience to help build off of. You need that veteran leadership, even in the coaching staff.
I agree. I think that you almost need an assistant coach that's going to challenge PK. Sort of like with how Willard challenged Rick Pitino when he was here. I think that there's got to be a different perspective. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Louisville were to change up half the bench on the assistant coaching staff. But then again, I don't know who. I don't know what the intention would be. It just seems like, I mean, if Pat Kelsey truly gets it, you're going to have to, honestly, I'm not going to say reinvent the whole wheel, but there's got to be some pretty distinct, drastic changes here and there. Because some of the things that we're watching, you don't just fix those overnight. Like getting blown out against the top teams on your schedule, you can say that's a talent thing. You spent a good amount of NIL money. So are you chalking this up to your team wasn't good enough, which also is a coaching thing, roster construction? Or are you saying that it's in-game coaching? At this point, I guess you would rather it be roster construction because you can change your roster. It's a little bit of everything. And after watching the documentary, I feel like he gets it. I said it. I think he understands the assignment. He understands the expectations. Made a comment that, there's a parking attendant at the Yum Center that responds to him differently when they're not succeeding. He mentioned he understands that if he's losing and he goes to the grocery store and you see him down the aisle, you'll turn your cart around. I mean, of course, it's all metaphors, but the sentiment remains the same. Winning is the only thing that matters. The energy does not matter if you're not winning. This quote-unquote culture, I say that because culture, it looks different depending on where you're at. The culture doesn't matter unless you're winning. Winning is a culture, by the way. Winning games every year is a representation of culture and can be defined as culture. So I think he gets it. At least he says all the right things. But look, I'm not naive. You all were checked out on Pat Kelsey and his press conferences. When the whole rat poison thing came about, everyone was checked out on the coach speak. Because at the end of the day, doesn't matter how good of a speaker you are. You got to win games. And if you truly understand the expectations, then you understand some pretty decent seismic moves need to happen. Let's start with roster construction. More on that coming up at the top of the hour. You're tuned into Mondays with Dalton Pence here on Big X Sports Radio. Top of the hour, March 23rd. It's officially off season for both football and men's basketball. We're answering the major questions and discussing the major talking points about sort of an off-season primer. What needs to happen for the Louisville Cardinals? We mentioned that, look, Pat Kelsey understands the assignment, but just passing the assignment's not good enough here at Louisville. You've got to ace the test. 502-414-1450, the Gameday Men's Health text line to text whatever you want and about how you think Louisville should create the roster. Dalton Pence, Roman Kelly. Well, not Roman Kelly. Roman Kelly's gone. I'm just so used to saying that. Dalton Pence and Matt Childress. My apologies, Matt.
You're good. Mike already did it once, so I'm used to it now.
That's fair. But surprised we haven't got any texts in about other teams, contrary to belief, Matt.
I know. I kind of wanted your takes on how you feel like Kansas and LSU did this year.
Well, I mean, it's nice to see Rick Pitino get to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, it was nice to see that.
Shows you how much I cared about the game. So this notion that I'm not a diehard Louisville fan is kind of hilarious. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, you're not. You're a diehard Kings fan.
Listen.
You excited for game one?
Oh, 100%. 100%. We have a run of show walkthrough on Thursday afternoon.
So Rowan told me because he's gonna have to miss our show, unfortunately, for that.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty interesting. And then Friday night, I'm just hoping that the weather's nice. But back to the Louisville fan base thing. I was at that Indiana State monsoon game in 2018. Nobody can say anything to me. I was like one of 50 people. Oh goodness, I was like, man, it's just a bad weather game. I didn't realize this was going to be the worst Louisville football season of my lifetime. Sheesh. I think weather-wise, one of the worst games I went to is I was at the 5 overtime Cincinnati game that was in a snowstorm. Was it 5 overtimes?
It was either 5 or 4.
You're talking about the rain game with Munchie Legault, right?
Maybe it was.
Yeah,
rain.
you're talking about it was the rain game because it was just straight coming down.
It was just really cold outside is what it was.
Munchie Legault. Oh, it was freezing.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yes, it was
Munchie
rain.
Legault
You're
versus
right.
Bridgewater. Yeah. That was my goodness. That was such an electric time. So glad Louisville won that game. But anyway, I think that my take for this segment is that if Pat Kelsey wants to turn this program into a contender next season, non-negotiable, you must prioritize size and athleticism. It's non-negotiable. You must bring in more size and athleticism.
I think so.
That's the point, Matt.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's the point.
I think that's exactly what you need. I mean, I feel like not just you and I have been talking, but everybody else I've been speaking to, it's almost a unanimous decision of a vote of what you want to see next year. It's the same thing when we look at football, right? The one thing everybody wants to see is they want to see a true quarterback come out, and if anything else, they wanted you to spend money on a quarterback and make it work. And, you get Lincoln Keenel. So, therefore, it's still a little bit of a question, but it seems like national media members are higher on Lincoln Keenel than they were with Miller Moss. It seems like it's almost written on the wall for Pat Kelsey this year, whereas, look, you saw what your deficiency were last season. You need to get length, you need to get size, and you need to get athleticism. You still need shooters, you still need scorers, but you don't – I think you said it last night a perfect way, is that you don't have to go all in on one end.
Yeah, no, you can't. You don't disregard shooting. I'm not telling you to stop going after shooters. I'm telling you that there are people in the portal that can shoot, but are also athletic and can use their size to their advantage. I wonder, Matt. If Pat Kelsey's looking at this and thinking, is this a problem with my scheme, or is it just because I didn't construct my roster the right way? Like. Offensively, yeah, we shot a lot of threes, but our inability to take the ball to the rim was because we didn't have anyone outside of Michael that could consistently get downhill and finish around the rim.
That's the thing. I think that he is going to chalk this up under roster construction, which is inevitably on him. I think that he is still fully bought in on his own scheme and the way he wants to run things. Mm-hmm. I think that he is going to be able to take this season and make note of it and say, look, if we had an extra backup, I think Adrian Woolley and Ryan Conwell did enough to have success as, being the one guard spot, even though that's not their natural position. but it was imperative to you're not having Michael and you're soft at the front court spot. I think he's going to think, okay, maybe if we had one more there, so say, wait, if we're tougher on the boards, then you inevitably give help to Woolley and, Ryan and Javon and all these guys. But then again, or if you get a second backup point guard to help out Michael, you're not as reliant on the boards because you still lose a lot in facilitation. I think he's more or less going to chalk it up to a roster construction issue.
He very well might. Look, I mean, you do have to intend to go to the basket because I don't care how good of a three-point shooting team you claim to be. If all a team has to do is sell out to defend the three because they know you're not going to consistently take the ball to the basket, doesn't matter how good you can shoot the ball. Or you better shoot 60% every night. Because what we saw this year was when the three-point shots weren't falling, the team struggled. The team didn't really do much offensively outside of a couple games. What we're seeing from NCAA tournament teams that are still alive is when their three-pointers aren't falling, they're able to resort to athleticism and taking the ball to the basket and dominating in the paint to the point where now, Matt, I'm looking at the roster construction. I'm like, a prerequisite should be if you're recruiting someone and a certain player can't take the ball to the basket consistently, pass. You got to go get guys. Now, look, you can have a couple three-point specialists. I'm not telling you can't. There's always room for Rain Smiths and Ryan McMahons and other three-point specialists, but I think 75% of your roster has to be guys that can put the ball on the floor, or 75% of your backcourt's got to be guys who can put the ball on the floor and get to the basket consistently. You had one this year. You had guys that could get to the rim, but not consistently. You had guys that either lack the explosiveness or the strength or the size, and that just can't be a problem next year. It doesn't just apply to the backcourt either. It's the wing spot as well. I think Louisville needs to invest in the perimeter, the wing spot. You need to invest in the 5 spot. The center spot's the one position that if you go into year 3 the same way you did years 1 and 2, you're severely limiting yourself. James Scott was good for what his role was, which was a rim runner. He was good at catching oops. That's it. Wasn't really a great defender. He was a decent passer, but didn't have any offense around the rim. Outside of the rim. And didn't have a post game either. Well, year 2, you go with Sinan Defru, who is not as athletic as James Scott, but he's a better threat inside because there was some semblance of a post game. But your backups were Evangelos Zugris, who was supposed to be like a scrappy rotational big man, high effort guy, and Ali Khalifa, who didn't do anything around the paint. So you've got to invest in the 5 spot. You have to invest in rim protection. Because what happens when you don't have anyone that can contest shots at the rim, teams are going to continue to destroy you in the paint. Pat Kelsey saw what happened the past 2 years, and now I'm giving him. I'm not giving him the opportunity. Of course, he's got the opportunity, and I'm being patient. I'm not saying one thing or another about next year until I see this roster. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because he's had a good first 2 years. But now he's got to prove to everyone that he can turn this team into a contender. And the way that you have to do that is by prioritizing size and athleticism. Because when you prioritize size around the basket, you're raising your floor and your ceiling when the three-point shots aren't falling. Athleticism. When the three-point shots aren't falling, you got guys that can take the ball to the rim or get the offensive rebounds. Defensively, can you chalk it up to scheme, or can you chalk it up to guys just not being good enough defensively for the scheme to work? Probably a little bit of both. But you go out and get athleticism and rim protection, that's going to help your defense. You get guys that have more lateral quickness so they can stay in front of opposing ball handlers, meaning that you don't get beat off the dribble, forcing the help defense to rotate, and then everyone's out of sync. It's a chain reaction, Matt. Size and athleticism is, I honestly, you'd probably say 90% of the battle here, because everything else I think gets corrected when you increase those two categories.
Yeah, I mean, you're not only protecting the rim and, but you're also giving your team more opportunities. I think it also comes at a rough time in the sense where Pat Kelsey has this obvious system where he wants to run in an incredibly high pace like he has his whole career. He wants to shoot a lot of threes, and that's not to surprise any of us. That's what he's done his whole career. That's what we knew he was going to come in here and play as, and it's an exciting brand to watch. We've seen it be successful. But at the end of the day, when the shots aren't falling, you need to have a backup, and that backup needs to be, like you said, it needs to be rim protection. It needs to be defense. It needs to be physicality. It needs to be where, okay, Ryan Conwell is shooting 3 for 15 tonight from behind the arc, but we're still winning this game because we're getting second-chance opportunities. They have to put a body on us in the paint because we are the more physical basketball team. We don't need 7 guys who can light you up from behind the arc because at the end of the day, if you're just too soft of a team, you're seeing it with teams like Arizona, who don't need to shoot almost any threes at all, and they're dominating all of college basketball just because they have such sheer physicality and such sheer strength. It makes it so difficult.
Why is this? It shouldn't surprise anyone. Look at the 1 seeds. Even if you put Florida out of the equation because they lost, Michigan, they can shoot threes, but they also destroy you in the paint. Same thing with Arizona and Duke as well. Cameron Boozer.
His whole thing is back to the basket. That's his whole MO.
That's just a chemistry thing with Duke, I believe. But Arizona and Michigan, like, what more do you need to see? Houston. Iowa State is a great three-point shooting team. And guess what? They shot 1 of 11 to start the game out against Kentucky on Sunday, and they went into halftime up 1 because their defense was incredible, and they took the ball to the basket. No one can create a national championship contender that only can shoot threes. Find me a team in the past however many years that has won national championships pretty much solely on shooting three-pointers. It's not the recipe for success. It can be a component. You can shoot and be good at shooting three-point shots. The issue is that there has to be an intentionality to going toward the rim. I'm not even sure if that's a word, but it is today, Matt. It is today, damn it. Let me ask you this. This is the second year that injuries have hurt the rotation. The first year, you can't really blame Pat Kelsey because no one can foresee Cason Pryor tearing his ACL. No one can foresee Abubakar Traore breaking his hand/wrist or arm, whatever it was. Maybe there was some previous evidence with like the Corin Johnson shoulder issue. But year 2, you willingly took a chance to bring Cason Pryor back. That's why I don't really give you a pass here for bringing him back, because you knew that he tore his ACL the previous November. So if it was a mental hurdle, unfortunately, that's something that you have to just kind of wear, right? I mean, you have to wear it. So do you think that the way that the Cardinals have been struck by injuries the first 2 years, does that change the way that Pat Kelsey looks at bringing in guys with a medical history?
I think it does. I think you don't take a shot on a guy like Cason Pryor again, where he has a very obvious injury coming into the season, even though when the season starts he'll still be doing some rehabilitation and trying to get up to speed. But I don't think it'll hinder him, looking at guys maybe have a past history of injuries or something like that. But if you're talking about, like I said, a Cason Pryor or like a Jaden Quainitz-esque situation, yes, I think that's out of the window for him. I don't think he takes another chance like that again.
Okay. I don't disagree either. See, I'm trying to cover all of the main things about roster construction before we predict who's going to stay, who's going to leave. Like I said, 502-414-1450, the Gameday Men's Health text line to get any thoughts in about the roster, what needs to happen in the portal. I will say this before we get into the predictions. You've got the budget. You've got the money to create a contender. I've seen some fans will say, oh, well, we don't have Kentucky money. You don't need Kentucky money to create a contender. Having the money is 50% of the battle. Scouting is the other 50%. And it wasn't because you didn't have the money. It's the way that you put the roster together. There was a little bit of redundancy. You had 3 natural shooting guards, and you paid them good money. Those were your 3 main portal additions. You put them next to Michael Brown Jr., but I mean, he was your only true point guard on the team outside of Kobe, and Kobe was into rotation player. When Michael went down, you didn't have anyone that could really run the offense to a distinguished level. You had some guys that were able to mask over some problems, but Conwell's effectiveness went down when his usage shot up. I think Woolley was probably your best point guard after Michael, but Isaac wasn't really a ball handler. These were 3 guys that kind of specialize, even with the ball in their hand, playing off ball. So you've kind of got to eliminate the redundancy with the way that you address the portal. Like, okay, if you go out and you get a dominant 2 guard, do you really need to go out and get another guard that's just as good as him when you don't have a dominant 5, or maybe your small forward position is lacking? I'm all for adding talent, but you can't add talent and disregard certain aspects or certain positions on this team.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go out and get a guy like Michael Brown and just expect him to be, miles better than everyone else, and that's going to cover up your flaws. I think Pat Kelsey has understood that. I think that you need to go out and understand that the best teams in college basketball are about balance. I mean, one of the best teams in college basketball, Duke, is not a great three-point shooting team. And it's not that they don't take threes like Arizona doesn't. They take a lot of threes. Isaiah Evans does most of their work for them, but they are not a great shooting team, but they have extreme success because of how efficient they are on defense and how physical they are. It's one where, yes, you do go out there and you get the most talented players you can, but at the same time, there needs to be a system in place in terms of, okay, we're a little soft in the front court. We need to add a little more beef there. We need an extra ball handler here because we got to get something off, the pressure off Michael's back. We got to get a second shooter here so that, if Ryan Conwell's not on today, or Isaac McNeely is lacking on defense, we can have somebody come in and kind of change the system we play. You need to, like I said before, you need to have a backup plan. And this season, there just was 0 backup plan at all. And as much as I'm saying that Pat Kelsey, it's right there in front of you to make the adjustments and make the improvements and turn this thing around once again, it is alarming to see that, you get to build this roster by hand, and you really just had one cause for attack, and then as soon as it got shut down, you didn't just lose like Lazard said earlier, you get blown out.
Yeah.
So that is alarming, and it does worry me going into this offseason, wonder what kind of roster he's going to build. And there's the question of, does he lean too heavy on a backup plan? Does this team lack an identity next season? Whereas, you got to take the lesser of 2 evils, and I think I'm taking the backup plan.
That's fair enough. Let's head to break. 2 segments down, 2 segments to go. Who stays? Who leaves? We'll give our predictions when we come back. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into Big X Sports Radio. 2 segments down, 2 segments to go here on this March 23rd edition of Mondays with Dalton, Pence, DP, and Matt Childress, taking you up till 7 o'clock tonight, talking all throughout the offseason primer for the Louisville men's basketball program. 502-414-1450, the Gameday Mens Health text line to get any thoughts or questions in. 502-414-1450. Okay, who stays, who goes? We're going to go down the line and predict this is our opinion, who we think will be back and won't be back. The players that, of course, can. Now, we're not going to talk about Mike Kell. There's just no reason to. He's going to the NBA draft. It's been decided. Like, he came to Louisville knowing that he was going to the draft, barring something completely unexpected. Even not playing half the season, he's going to the NBA draft. Who do you want to start with, Matt?
I think the big one's going to be Adrian Woolley.
What do you think? Now, how would you grade his season overall? Like, if you had to give a grade on his season.
B+. I think it's a B+. I think that we saw him develop as a on-ball defender at the end of the season, which early on in the season we didn't think that we'd even see that at all out of Adrian Woolley. I think that he kind of embraced taking over that Ryan Conwell / Michael Brown primary ball handler role, which I think we saw more success out of Ryan Conwell when Adrian Woolley started to take over that position. He obviously has rough games. Miami away and the ACC tournament game, or sorry, not Miami away, but the ACC tournament game against Miami was a rough one for him. But I think down the stretch we saw a lot of Adrian Woolley that shows that there's promise for next season, and not as a starting point guard, but maybe more minutes as his regularly desired role as a 2-guard, 3-guard spot. I think that we could see if we were to spend the money, he's probably going to ask for an okay amount. If we get him for a good price, I think that I'm with him coming back.
I'd be fine with him coming back. First of all, my grade would be a B. I thought that there was some really good moments, and I thought that there were some moments that weren't so good. Obviously, I'm taking into consideration the jump up from, what are they, Conference USA? Is that who Kennesaw State?
I believe so. Let me find out.
Sun Belt, Conference USA? It's one of the two, isn't it? I want to say it's Sun Belt.
It is Conference USA.
It's Conference USA? Okay. But, I mean, you're jumping up a much larger level of play. Think that he struggled with maybe the physicality early on and then sort of found his role later on. I would love for him to come back. I'm going to be honest with you. This is where I think the first controversial opinion comes out. I don't think he's back.
I don't think he is either.
I worried early on about the rumors that Arkansas might be lurking. And if Arkansas is lurking, I guarantee that the schools closer to home for him, like Alabama and Auburn, could also be trying to bring him back to Alabama. I don't know. I mean, I went back and forth with this one. It also kind of comes to the point where it's like, how much is too much, right? He's already making a good amount now. If he comes to you for an increase and you're looking at things saying, well, I mean, you averaged 9 and 4 on decent shooting. Can he take that next step to be a star? Is he like a number one option? I don't think so. I think he's a good complementary scoring piece, but part of me believes that someone's going to overpay. When I say overpay, meaning just pay more than the others. I'm not saying that like he doesn't deserve that money. I'm just saying that I think there's going to be some school, probably an SEC school, that gets involved and convinces him to transfer.
Yeah, you come down to, especially with the links to Arkansas, when you're talking about Alabama, you're talking about Auburn. I think Auburn is the only one of those that doesn't fit in this category, but you're also going against Pat Kelsey versus coaching pedigree.
Yep.
And who's going to get the most out of me if I'm going to play there? Because I think that even Adrian Woolley understands that he's probably a 4-year guy.
John Calipari gets who he wants, man.
He does.
And Nate Oates does to an extent as well. And if you're sitting there and you're at Alabama and you've got the money to, at the very, very worst, match Louisville, and you're saying, well, why not come back to your hometown and play for a team that's currently in the Sweet 16 and has more of, I would say, an attractive offensive style, a more proven offensive style.
And a coach that's used that offensive style to reach the heights that you want to reach.
Yeah, it's unfortunately it's a downside, and My gut, and I don't have any inside information here, my gut is that he's not a Louisville Cardinal next year.
I think that'd be, I think that I would agree with you. I think a lot of people are on that kind of sense right now. Just like you said, with no information at all, just gut feeling. It's one where, like I said, the links have been Arkansas that we've known of, but if guys like Nate Oates and Alabama come calling, Pat Kelsey's thing is, look, we're not going to pay you as much as they are. They're going to compete. But at the same time, you're going to run the system. You're really just banking on that he really loves the Pat Kelsey culture and, the university and the fan base, which Nate Oates, I'll be honest, hasn't done a lot for his image in this season. So there's something you could also bank on there for a little bit. But at the same time, in this era of college basketball, how much does that matter to some people? So
yeah,
I'm gonna bank on he's not here.
I also think that there's this I don't even know how you would even explain it. It's just nowadays everyone is, I won't say all set to transfer, but you see more multiple stops along the way, right? Where guys, Ryan Conwell played at 4 schools in 4 different seasons. So I'm predicting Adrian Woolley to leave Louisville. But it's also not a loss that just makes me depressed. I'd rather him be a Cardinal next season, but if he leaves, you free up that money to go out and get someone that could potentially have a larger impact and a higher ceiling, right?
Yeah, you're also able to go get a guy that has more veteran leadership and more experience at the Power 4 level. If we're going to sit here on this show and then say that there's nobody out there that could beat Adrian Woolley in his position, then we're in trouble. We're in trouble. That's just not true. There's going to be plenty of guards, especially at the combo guard position. That's just like the one position in basketball. It's flooded. It's like the running back position in football. There are more combo guards than anything in the world right now. Like you said, I agree with you. I would love to have Adrian Woolley back and have him stay as a Pat Kelsey piece moving forward and then have him be that veteran leadership on this team. But it's, I'm not confident in it.
This one might be a fast answer, and I understand that the likelihood is pretty low, but there is a real situation where Cason Pryor gets another year of eligibility. Now, whether that's at Louisville or not, TBD, but do you think there's any shot that Cason Pryor is back next season?
If he's here if we're giving him a Chick-fil-A gift card to the SAC, and then he's able to play off that or just sit the bench.
Come on, man. You're going to have to at least give him season tickets to the Kings.
We can figure that out.
Maybe.
Well, we'll put Cason Pryor's NIL package together.
Honorary PA announcer Cason Pryor.
We're making a joke, but in terms of
you can't pay him what you've been paying in the past 2 seasons.
I don't think you can pay him at all.
He's been a healthy scratch, so I understand that there might be a rationale as to why he should return because of what he brings to the program, but the guy was a healthy scratch this year. So I think the odds of him coming back are probably less than 5%.
Look, if he wants to come back for legitimately little to no money and be like the vibes guy like Frank Ansamibe, which Frank Ansamibe ended up getting more minutes than Pryor did.
But Pryor's better than Frank, no disrespect to Frank. But it's also this is his last year of college. This is his last opportunity to go make probably as much money as he can because
not going to be here.
Probably not going to the NBA, but maybe he could go play in Europe. But this is his opportunity to cash in on NIL. I don't think he's here either. Let's see. Let's continue down the line. We'll go with Sananda Frew. What about Sonny Frew? You think he's back?
Sananda Frew's not coming back.
You don't think so?
I think that
which is more likely, him transferring or going back over to Germany?
Transferring.
You think so?
I think he'll make more money. I think there will be a school that is just like a James Scott situation. There will be a school out there that wants to pay him over 7 figures.
You think so?
I think so.
Okay.
I know that we paid quite a bit for him to come over here and make that move. I don't think that he would be as fast to jump ship and go back because I think that he does have NBA aspirations at some point. But at the same time, I think that in his situation, the NBA is looking like it's dwindling, and he's probably going to have to go back. So it's almost like a Cason Pryor situation where you're going to go to the highest bidder.
Well, think about it. He's a junior right now, so he has 1 year of eligibility remaining. He averaged 9 and 6 this season on 75% from the field. I agree with you that he could go somewhere else. Maybe I think maybe dropping down a level, and that might help him out more. Like, I'm not saying like full on a one bid league, but if he were to go to like the American Athletic Conference or maybe the A10, like no disrespect to either of those leagues, but I think him dropping down a level would be beneficial for him. But there's also like a real justification for, maybe him saying, you know what, the college game, it's pretty clear I'm not comfortable with the way that college ball is played over here. Let me just go back over to Germany, where I was looked at as one of the best young players in the league. And maybe that is my pathway back to potentially the NBA. But I could see both ways, but I don't think he's a Louisville Cardinal next season.
I don't think so either.
All right, let's see. What about Evangelos Zougaras?
Evangelos Zougaras is back.
I think so, too. I want him back.
I want him back more than, honestly, anybody on this list in terms of what we saw from him. I think that he can be a great if we go with what you said earlier and we get serious talent, serious length, and serious size in the 5 position, he can be a great 4 on this team. And I think that we all know Zougaras is humble enough and understands his game enough that he's not going to ask you for a lot of money.
Well, I mean, I don't know how he could. No disrespect, but he was the vibes, energy guy that played a certain role. And for those people saying, well, you can't bring him back and start him, well, you're not going to start him. Evangelos Zougaras is not a starter on a national championship contender. He is an end of the rotation, plays his role to a T, plays with 120% effort. There's a role for a guy like that on almost every team in America. 100% you bring Zoo back. At the very worst, he's a guy that you can put in at the end of games like you were originally going to. But I think he's kind of growing into that role. He could give you really solid minutes off the bench. Again, he can't be your starter, but sign me up for reserve minutes, Zoo. 100% sign me up.
Yeah, I mean, he came out and showed you that even when he was a starter this season, like I said, I don't want – if Zoo is our starting piece of the 4 or 5, I am still alarmed. But at the same time, he came out there and gave you efficient minutes to the end of the season to the point where he was doing a lot of our work on the glass. He was doing a lot of work in the paint at the end of the season. I'm perfectly fine with him coming back and getting, maybe 6th man, 7th man off the bench minutes.
You think 6th, 7th man?
I like 6th,
See,
7th.
I was thinking like 9th man off the bench.
I
think Zoo. Okay, let me hold up before we head to break. We got a couple minutes before we head to break, and we'll talk about Kenai Roots and some of the red shirts. But Zougaras this season, he averaged, 9.1 minutes per game. Now, let's say, since he became a starter against Syracuse, he played 11 minutes against the Orange, 8 minutes at Miami, 18 minutes versus SMU in the first round of the ACC tournament, 11 against Miami, 10 against USF, 14 against Michigan State. If he's playing about 10 to 15 a game, I'm fine with that. I don't think that's 7th man minutes, though. I think that's like 9th, 10th.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
But anyway, the point still stands. I want him on my team next season because at the very worst, I think he embodies the culture that Pat Kelsey's striving for. I feel like this team wasn't a huge culture fit for what Pat Kelsey wants at Louisville. Zougaras was an exception. So we think, and we've been step with this, we think that Wooley's gone, we think that Frew is gone, we think that Pryor's gone, and we think that Zougaras is back. Well, there's a couple other players that could return, of course. Kenai Roots, London Johnson, and Muhammad Kamara. We'll tell you what we think. Do they stay or do they go? Coming up on the final segment of Mondays with Dalton Pence here on Big X Sports Radio. 6:42, taking you up till 7 o'clock here in the Big X Sports Radio studio. Dalton Pence, Matt Childress, you're tuned in to Mondays with Dalton Pence. Thank you all for tuning in. If you were a holdover from the Rutherford Show earlier, or if you just tuned in to Mondays with Doopy, definitely appreciate you all for tuning in. We're working on some special guests as we go through the offseason. Of course, spring ball is here for the football program, so we will have all of your talk about the portal, about spring football, and everything Louisville sports, contrary to some belief on this show, Matt. Let's continue. Who stays, who goes? We will begin with, let's go with Kenai Roots. Stay or go?
This one's tough.
He said he wants to stay. You saw that, right?
Yes.
But there's a difference because
he does have cards tattooed on his leg.
Who was the recruit that got Louisville tattooed?
Oh, you're talking about
was it Bryce Hopkins?
It was the running back recruit, right?
Oh, it was Reuben Owens.
Reuben Owens, yeah.
I thought there was a basketball recruit that got Louisville tattooed as well.
Might have been. Reuben Owens is the one that I think.
I remember Reuben, but I for whatever reason I thought that there was a basketball recruit. Maybe it wasn't Bryce.
But I definitely want him to stay. I think that we saw the decision-making from Kenai Roos and the more, fundamental basketball for him was a lot better. Like, last season, there were plenty of times that, he just went up and would try to yam on somebody. I felt like this year he developed, a real post game, and you saw a lot of finesse from him. I think we saw him exceed our expectations defensively at some points this season. I'd like to see his jump shot develop a little bit more. He looked like he wasn't very confident with it this year. It looked a little kind of janky, but it looked like he was working on it.
The role that Pat Kelsey's going to ultimately give him or want to give him, I ultimately think that Roots is going to be a go. I just don't know that he fits Pat Kelsey's system, which sucks because I think there's a role for him. But here we are, year two. Look at how many minutes did he? I'm bringing that up right now. How many minutes did Kenai Roots play this season? Year one, he played 13.4 minutes per game. Year two, 15.9. He increased his average by 2 points per game. Do I think that he could take that next step forward? 100%. Will he get the opportunity to is the main thing, Matt. And I'm just not so sure. I'm torn on this one. This is actually the toughest one. I'm going to, because I have to make a prediction, I'm going to lean that he goes.
I understand. I mean, it makes total sense. It's one where, I think he has NBA draft potential if he reaches his maximum potential. I think he has the size, the build, and the athleticism. It's one where is he going to be able to get the development he needs out of Pat Kelsey, or can he find somewhere else to find it?
Muhammad Kamara.
He definitely stays.
You think he's a definite stay?
I think that if he doesn't, that's a big, no for Pat Kelsey. You got a guy on roster that you said, you didn't pay him significant money, but you paid him to be here. You put him as a red shirt. He never played, obviously, and you brought him here to develop so he can come and play a second season. If you lose him to the transfer portal, that's a big stain for Pat Kelsey.
I think he stays as well. The era of redshirting and staying with that team, I think, are over. Automatically staying with that team, right? I think with Kamara's case, there's a legit, rationale for him staying. I think that there are some players that Louisville might be familiar with who Kamara might help the Cardinals end up landing, potentially. So I think Kamara stays. I think he is at the very least going to play one more season at Louisville just to see. Obviously, he's an unknown, right? We don't know what you're going to get from Kamara, but I do think that Kamara stays. So, last one is London Johnson. Got to be honest, man, I'm not all the way convinced that he's a Cardinal next year.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm honestly not convinced at all.
I think it feels like a 50-50 in my opinion. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. But this wouldn't be the first time this has happened. And I won't say that I'm going to be mad either because he came in at the semester break, and there are legitimate concerns as to whether or not he's your starter or not. I don't know that he is a starter on a contending team. I think he's a rotational player, but if he's a starter, that means that you've got to upgrade at the other spots around him. I just don't know that London Johnson is automatically going to be on next year's team.
Yeah, I think it's all going to be determined on what we do in the portal early on. If it looks like we hit a portal really hard like we did this past season and we start getting some big names in there early, I don't think London Johnson returns. I don't think that he is a starting piece for this team. I think that he is, like you said, a rotational/depth piece. But for a team that has Final Four aspirations and serious success in the tournament, he's going to have to either, one, understand that he's not worth that much money. Two, he's not going to get as much rotational minutes. Three, your spot is honestly always, at every moment, is up to subject for somebody else. So I think that he's inevitably going to find somewhere else to go.
I think he stays. My gut is telling me that he stays. I think that Pat Kelsey is going to convince him that even though you're coming off the bench, or even if you're starting, like, you're going to play minutes. You're going to play a decent amount. This is why, we brought you in. But you just never know. Maybe it's not Louisville's decision to make, because there is a whole nother party, right? London Johnson's camp could decide, well, thanks for everything. We have a better opportunity here. And that could happen. Happens all the time. So, ultimately, I think Zoo, Kamara, and London are back. And for you, it's Zoo, Kamara, and Kanai.
Yep.
Truthfully, you need to go get 5 new starters.
Yeah, I mean, none of those guys are starting pieces.
Woolley? Probably. I think Woolley's a penciled-in starter if he stays. But the other ones, I want to believe in Kanai Roots as a potential starter, but I'm not sure how Pat Kelsey goes from not playing him an extreme amount this year to automatically he's a starting 3 for Louisville next year. I don't see that at all. So, to conclude things out, I'm going to give you, like, if you said, hey, Dalton, you can pick 3 different types of players to add on to this year's team. I'm going to give you those 3 players. The first one is a high-floor vet point guard that can create for others. That's my first addition, Matt. Thoughts?
Oh, I thought you were going to give me all of yours.
No, I was just going to kind of stagger them.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I think we need. You need that kind of, obviously he was the defensive player of the year, so that kind of negates that. But like the Chucky Hepburn-esque, where he's got 4-year starter, he played in the Power 4 level, he knows how to get the job done, he knows how to get his guys open, but also keep attention on him to make the job a little bit easier on his teammates. I think that's 100% a solid S you need to grab.
The second one is an athletic wing that can take the ball to the basket and defend.
Do you think there is any chance that Kanai Roos could fill that role?
Could he?
Coming, in the offseason, he develops enough that he fills that role so you don't need to pay somebody. Is there any chance?
I think even if that answer is yes, you need to bring another one in.
Okay.
I think that it couldn't hurt to have a Kanai Roots coming off the bench, because you don't just want one really athletic, good point of attack defender, right?
Yeah.
Michigan has, 4? Arizona seemingly has 4 in their starting lineup alone. You need some dogs. Can never have too many dogs.
Well, I mean, A.J. DeBonce is coming back, so we're just going to get him.
Oh, okay. Does he know that?
Because his mom wants him to come back.
I mean, there is like a certain case or point to be made that if like you're one of these freshmen that I won't say you're an afterthought, but if you're in that like 5 to 10 range, there's a very understandable opinion that if you come back, you could be the number 1 pick.
Yeah, because next year's class is not looking anywhere near.
So people that say, oh, well, Michael should potentially come back for a second season because if he's healthy, then he could be a top 3 NBA draft pick. And I I listen to the point. I understand players don't usually do that. You don't see that often at all. But I get the rationale this year.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a stacked, which I know a lot of these players came into college knowing the talent they were playing against, but not knowing the depth in it. I mean, freshmen are going down to like the 120th player levels are excelling in college basketball. And there is like you said, there is a thought that, maybe you might see a player surprisingly come back for next season.
Welcome to Louisville, Nate Ament. You imagine how much different the season would be if you would have just brought him in?
I would have loved Nate Ament. He wouldn't have. He adapted. I don't think he would have fit into our system very well.
I think he would have. Nate Ament fits in any system, truthfully. All right. Third player that I would add is an effective center on both ends of the floor.
Give me this one's tough because I feel like the 5 position is so system dominant. Like, there are really good stretch 5s. There are really good physical 5s. There are really good rim protecting 5s. Give me a player in college basketball today, not that you would get, but that you would compare. That's who you want on this team. Like that essence of a 5.
No, that's a good point. I think that one player that if I could get a player like, is it Chinaloo?
Ruben Chinaloo?
Chinaloo from Florida.
Okay.
He's a player that he's not like a guy that's going to step out and hit threes. I don't care if my center can hit threes. I want a guy that could dominate around the rim.
So you'd rather have him rather than like Tyler Houck?
I mean, there's a need for both of them, but can Houck be a 5 in a system without Condon and Chinaloo?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I need a 5. Who else would make sense?
If you could, because I related to this kind of player because it was one that coming into the season we didn't realize he was going to take this big of a jump. But you get a guy like Florida Badunga.
I was literally about to go with Badunga.
I mean, I think he is
Visar is another one. Just a guy that you know is going to hold his own on offense, but can also defend.
I think so, exactly. I mean, a guy who is so physical on the defensive end that, he turns you, he gets you into running transition. And on the other side, he's so large and he's so tough that he can go get you a bucket when you can't score from anywhere from the other levels. You need one. You got to get, at bare minimum, you got to get one.
I agree. And if you want to go with more of a defensive guy, Onyesu from Virginia, the old Kentucky big man.
Yeah, I like him.
He would be one that I would go after. I'll tell you another player, a couple players that I've been fans of. The College of Charleston guy, the defensive player of the year, Chol, I think it's Machat.
Okay.
Aiden Sherrill from Alabama is one that I would say sign up tomorrow. Who else?
What would you feel like getting a guy like Mustafa Cham?
I'd be fine with Cham.
Like, he's not obviously the most.
I just need a 5 that's going to play that role, who's going to be a guy that if you give him the ball down low, he can take a dribble, do a drop step, and shoot the ball over his right shoulder.
I was saying, because he's not going to. He is closer to like the Honest Mahmoud kind of player where he's not super physical, but he has the length.
Yeah, as long as you can protect the rim, that's what I care about.
I'm right there.
Like, if you protect the rim because you're super strong and nobody can body you down low, fine. If you protect the rim because you're not that strong but you have a 7'4" wingspan, also fine. We just need rim protection at this point.
Yeah.
I don't care what type of profile the player is, whether it's a taller but maybe not as strong or maybe a shorter but stronger. I just need an upgrade at the 5. Louisville needs an upgrade at the 5.
I agree.
So, yeah, that's where I'm at. My 3 additions would be a veteran point guard that can create for others, an athletic wing that can put the ball on the floor but also defend, and a center that is effective on both ends of the floor. Prerequisite being rim protection. Have to be, at the very worst, a serviceable rim protector. That's my 3.
I like those 3.
You got the money. Go get them. I also believe that you're going to have a tad bit more to work with for NIL than you did this year. How much? I don't know. It's going to be north of $10 million, that's for sure.
I think the only one of those that I would personally change is instead of the wing, and I'm taking this on the terms of we're going to say Kanai's coming back and he's going to fill that role for you, so you have to go hit somebody else in the portal. I would like a confident, like a Ryan Conwell S2 guard, but is more defensive heavy. He's not, your all-out left-handed shooter who can get to the basket, but he's a guy who, when that facilitating point guard maybe goes up against somebody that's stacked a little bit better than him, you can switch off and you have basically this really defensive heavy guard to play with, kind of like a Chucky Hepburn.
Okay, I don't hate it. I don't think that Kenai Roots is a starter next year, even if he's back, though.
I don't think so either. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I get it. Being a contrarian for no reason whatsoever.
Of course, that's my job.
Oh man, but off season just getting started. Don't forget, chat.
Are we cooked, chat?
Are we cooked, chat? I'm sitting here in the Discord. Don't forget, portal opens up April 7th. So nothing officially can happen until then. You probably will see that if Louisville does have some portal entries, you'll probably find out before April 7th. You'll probably find out who Louisville's interested in before April 7th. But just know that it is different this year. Guys can't officially enter the portal and commit anywhere until April 7th. But that is going to wrap up this week's edition of Mondays with Dalton Pence. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next week. Go Cards.
Go Cards.